Well, welcome to the April 26th meeting of the Bellows Falls Board of Trustees. It's 6:02. We're going to start the meeting. Call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approve the minutes of the Tuesday, April 12th meeting. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes, and any comments, questions, or concerns on those minutes?
No,
Not hearing. We have a motion for approval from Jim.
Second.
We have a seconded. All those in favor? Any discussion further? Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor of the minutes as printed? Say aye.
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 do you have to go person by person because
Yep,
I'm on
I
the
believe
phone?
so.
Jeff Dunbar, aye.
Wade Michelle, aye.
Stephen
Jim
Golick, aye.
McAulify.
Yeah, that would.
And Jim McAulify.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving down to the next item on the agenda would be additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that require ratification at a future meeting.
I have no additions for tonight.
No additions? Okay. Not hearing any. We're going to move into the public comment section. There'll be 3 minutes per person for any public comment.
I think Deb just, oh, there she is.
There we go.
Hang on. Can she hear us? There she is. You gotta unmute.
Yes, I had bandwidth problems. Sorry about that. Right up here, right up. Everybody.
You didn't miss much. We just approved the minutes and
We're on item number 5.
we have Jigs by Zoom and you by Zoom, and we were at public comment if you wanted to continue from the agenda.
Oh, so wait, so who opened the meeting? You, Scott?
Oh, no, that would be our senior member, Mr. Golick.
Oh,
So if you're ready, I'll turn the gavel back over to you if you'd like.
thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so the meeting's been called to order. We're down to public comment. Was that it?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there anyone who wishes to make public comment? I don't see anything in the Zoom, so anyone in the room, Scott?
No.
No, all set.
Okay. All right. All right, moving on then to the manager's report.
Thank you. So we are in the season where road construction projects have restarted, and one of the ones that are going to impact us in the village has already begun, and that's the completion of the work they started last year on the Arch Bridge. They still have some joint repairs to complete, as well as some minor paving and some pavement marking. We're still in dispute with both Vermont and New Hampshire about the extent of the damages left over from the extension of that project, plus the rerouting of truck traffic off of Route 12. So we'll continue to keep the board in the loop as that goes through various levels of VTrans. But what it'll mean in the short term is there will be periods of time when they'll be going down to one lane on the bridge, depending upon some of the, especially when they're doing the joint repair work. They are supposed to have traffic control supplied with troopers. And at this point, they have not given me specific dates as to when they're going to be doing that work. So I can't give you a specific time or date of when that's going to start. But no matter when that does occur, I'm sure there'll be some impacts to us locally, and we'll keep an eye on things. And if it's impacting to the point where it's creating gridlock on our side, we'll have to reach out and make some accommodations so that it's not creating problems and more problems on our side than it already has with the length of this project. So I guess we're at the point now where let's get it done and hopefully put it behind us in relationship to the impacts of its caused. It has been more impactful, I think, than what we had anticipated, and not in a great way. So we're looking forward to that one finishing up. There is still ongoing work and obviously some impacts on Canal Street as the Bellows Falls Garage project continues. A lot of utility work has been ongoing there, and there will be periodic issues as they started to the heavier phases of construction. The good news is that contractor who has been working there has been very cooperative and has been very good reaching out to the businesses and to the residents and to other concerned parties to try to work with people to minimize the inconveniences. And so far, it's been a very productive relationship with the crew that's working there. And it appears that they're making good progress. And at this point, there aren't any major impediments that might slow the project down. So I know sometimes it'll create some inconveniences as we approach some of the larger events like Alumni Weekend and our Old Home Days, but I think we can accommodate those types of activities and still keep that project moving. So at this point, that's just the majority of things. I would just ask people to be patient and understand that at various points in time, there might be some minor inconveniences, but hopefully the improvements will ultimately outweigh the short-term disruptions.
Okay, is that it?
That was it.
All right. Thank you. And we move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the FY 2022 audit review. We have that in our
Great.
plan.
So
2020, it should be 2021, I think.
Yeah, yes, it should be 2021. 2022 is now. So yes, thank you,
Yes.
Jake.
So we have Brittany Gilman here from RHR Smith. She was the head of our audit team, and I think she wants to just highlight some areas in this current audit. So with that as an introduction, I think we have Brittany on Zoom. So we'll go ahead and, if that's okay, let her take it from there.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, everyone. You are correct. This is the FY21 audit, although sometimes it feels like we're always living in, 3 different fiscal years. So I can understand the confusion there. This is the draft of your 2021 audit. So while I don't expect numbers to change substantively, there is opportunity for updating, and there is some there were some, wordings, maybe some highlighted areas where we needed further clarification. And also I did hear someone mention a typo. So Scott, if you can just put that in your email response with the other questions, we can get that taken care of for the final. That said, I don't expect any of the numbers to change, with the exception of one, which I will tell you. I know that everyone's really disappointed to hear that I'm not going to read the audit word for word. So I'll just try to highlight some of the major areas for you and tell you where you can go if you want to dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to be referring to page numbers, and when I'm referring to page numbers, I'm referring to the number at the bottom of the page. So if you're looking at it electronically, it is not the number of the PDF, just to avoid any confusion. So the first place that I'll draw your attention starts on page 1. It goes from pages 1 through 3, and that's the independent auditor's report. It outlines management versus auditor responsibility, and also has arguably the most important part of the audit, which is the opinion paragraph on page 2, almost at the very top. And this is where we say that we believe that the financial statements that are presented here are fairly presented in all material respects. So I often say that that doesn't sound like a super exciting paragraph, but it is the best opinion that you can get. And so that's great. We believe that everything included here is stated fairly in all material respects. The next sort of chunk that I'll point your attention to is pages 4 through 12. This is the management discussion and analysis. And this is just a really good summary of the highlights of everything else. So if you read nothing else, if you look at nothing else, I do recommend that you go through the management, the MD&A, because it really does give you a good synopsis. And also you may be able to find something more quickly there if you're kind of trying to pull something from your memory. I'm not going to review it because I actually will go through the audit in a bit more detail, but I always like to point out to folks that that's a great place to look for a condensed version. The first financial statement that I'm going to point your attention to is on page 17, and this is the balance sheet of governmental funds. So governmental funds focus on your near-term assets and liabilities. So things like capital assets and long-term debt are not presented on this statement, although we do disclose them in other places. And it also, the columns group major funds. So there are certain criteria that have to be met for a fund to be considered major, which means it's presented on its own. You only have one major governmental fund, your general fund, and then all the other governmental funds are grouped together in that other governmental funds column. But we do have schedules that break them out in the back, which I will point you to a little later on. You actually don't have very many other governmental funds, but there is a breakdown of them. And in general, going top to bottom, list assets and liabilities from most liquid to least liquid. So most like cash or most near term to least like cash. Towards the bottom of the page is where most boards, rightly so, are interested. These are your fund balances. And there are 5 categories. So your non-spendable fund balances are things like prepaid expenses and inventory. Restricted fund balance is generally restricted by an outside agency like a grant or possibly a restricted donation. Committed and assigned fund balances are committed or assigned by the boards and or the voters, depending on the highest level of authority. And then unassigned is exactly like it sounds. It's available for use. It doesn't have any other purpose. It can be used for tax relief or not, but it's unrestricted in use. I will note that in the final draft of the audit, under assigned fund balance, committed fund balance, there will be $20,000. And then, so your unassigned fund balance will be $20,000 less. And that is committed funds related to an article for fire and police building repair, I believe. And we just don't have that broken out here. So that was voted on by the voters. So you have about $600,000 in unassigned fund balance in your general fund after that is moved, which I would say is pretty substantial in comparison to the size of your budget. We are seeing many towns and schools and all kinds of organizations see pretty substantial increases in fund balance related to COVID. So, there were COVID funds that came in that you were able to kind of reallocate costs to. In some cases, services were decreased, but still tax revenue came in. So we are seeing that. So one point of discussion for the board will be what you intend to do with that fund balance, whether it's using some of that for tax relief or adding to reserve funds or establishing additional reserves for future projects. That'll definitely be something you want to discuss. Moving on, we're going to skip one page and go to page 19. This is statement E, still for your governmental funds. So this is your revenues and expenditures. And if you go down kind of towards the bottom, you can see your net change in fund balance. So you added about $120,000 to your fund balance in FY21. So that's how you got to that total fund balance of $643,000. So your revenues exceeded your expenditures. On the next page, I'll direct you to, we're just going to kind of skip a page and go to page 20, which is statement G. So these are your proprietary funds. So you have one type of proprietary fund, which is an enterprise fund. And we also refer to these as business type activities. So this is your water and your sewer. And these funds operate largely on fees for service rather than your normal governmental revenues, which are things like taxes. And another part of the difference is that they focus on both near and long-term assets and liabilities. So you will see your non-current assets, like your fixed assets, so land, construction and process, buildings, and you will also see long-term debt presented here. So you actually have to go to the next page to get all the way down to your net position, which is how we refer to fund balance in enterprise funds. And you can see that both the water and the sewer departments have positive unrestricted net position. Most of your net position is tied up in capital assets, which is very common for enterprise funds. And still you have positive unrestricted net positions. So that's really great. Obviously, you can see that the water fund has a much higher unrestricted net position than the sewer fund does. And both funds have, for a couple of years at least, been losing unrestricted net position each year. The water department, you'll see when we get to the next statement, had a significant amount of principal forgiveness on long-term debt this year, which led to an increase in net position. But from an operating perspective, there was a loss for both funds. And you can see that on the next page, which is statement H on page 23. We do divide up the revenues and expenses between operating and non-operating. Excuse me. So non-operating are things like principal forgiveness and interest income and grant income or interest expense. And the operating is like more your day-to-day. So it's your fees. And then your expenses are like your wages and benefits and supplies and things like that. So you can see about halfway down the page that both funds had an operating loss. But for the water fund, if you go down a little bit further, to the total change in net position was positive just because of that non-operating revenue. But both funds had enough net position from prior years to absorb the loss, but it is something to be aware of moving forward in your discussions about rate setting. And then the notes to the financial statements actually start on page 28, and that's actually the bulk of the audit. A lot of people don't read the notes. Some of them are good bedtime reading, especially the pension note. But it is, the sort of the bulk of the audit, and a lot of these are required. They're all required by accounting standards. So it starts with note 1, which is a summary of your significant accounting policies. Everybody has a COVID-19 note disclosure now that talks about what, if any, impact the pandemic had on your operations and if there are any foreseeable impacts in the future. And it also kind of summarizes how you deal with cash, how you deal with, all your other accounts receivable. It's just a summary of your policies and procedures. The next notes go in the same order that the balance sheet does. So it starts, if you had cash, it would start with cash and sort of go down from most liquid to least liquid. One place that I like to point boards, just because I think that it is good information to have, is note 6. It actually starts on page 44 and goes through page 47. And it's your long-term debt note. And I just think it's really useful to have this information all compiled in one place. It has all your debt summarized. It has the schedule of debt, kind of tells you what the interest rates are, when the debt is going to mature. Excuse me again. And there's a description of each type of debt that you have. And I just think this is good information when you're doing long-term planning, because you can kind of see when debt is due to retire, and it can help you in deciding whether it's a good time to get more, or, if it's going to free up some funds in your budget when you're not paying that principal and interest. And then skipping ahead all the way. So the rest of the notes it's largely the pension plan. Like I said, we use actuarial documents from the state of Vermont for much of this, for VEMR's, Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement. And it's a lot of, actuarial assumptions and things like that, which you have essentially no control over. So page 65 is where I wanted to bring you to next. And these are some supplemental schedules that we provide to provide further information. So on page 65 is your budgetary comparison schedule for your general fund. You can see that your revenue was slightly more than anticipated, and your expenditures actually were also slightly less than anticipated. And your revenue significantly exceeded your expenditures. So this is what led to this increase in fund balance. And if you wanted to see that in a little bit more detail, you can look at pages 74 and 75. It's called Schedule A. It's the schedule of departmental operations, and it gives you a little bit more of a breakdown. It's not going to be as detailed as, excuse me, what you get probably in, your quarterly projections. It's not line by line, but it does kind of give some more information about the specific departments and the areas within those departments. And then starting on page 79, goes through page 83. This is that breakdown of your non-major funds. Remember I said, if it's an other governmental fund, it get grouped together, and we break those out here. So you have just a couple of them. You have an asset forfeiture fund, police and fire. There's an adopt an angel fund. And then I think there's one capital and equipment fund, which none of these have significant balances in them right now. And haven't seen a lot of activity in the past couple of years. I'm getting towards the end here on page 87. This is your SEFA. It's your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. We're required to present this if you have $750,000 in federal expenditures or more. And when you hit that point, it triggers what's called a single audit. So we have to do some additional compliance testing on the federal programs. We detail a report related to that in the following pages. So page 89 and 90 is our internal auditor's report over the single audit portion, essentially. And there's another opinion paragraph here, which says that we believe that you complied in all material respects with the major program that was tested, which was the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund. And we also have a report over internal controls where we'd say that we did not find any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, but we did find opportunities for improvement, which were disclosed in the management letter. And what that means is that we didn't find anything that we believe actually caused your financial statements to be materially misstated. So we found some problems with things throughout the year, but everything was sort of taken care of by the end of the year. And we'll talk about that in just a minute when we talk about the management letter. But there was nothing that we felt needed to be disclosed in the audit proper. So we kept everything in the management letter. Then the very last page is a summary, and you're probably thinking, why didn't you just start there? But it just kind of tells you what our opinion is. It's unmodified. Again, that's the best opinion that you can get. It means that we believe things are fairly stated. We didn't know any non-compliance related to the federal programs or over financial reporting. And it tells you what major program we tested. So that's the financial statement itself. In terms of the management letter, this is essentially, for the most part, the same management letter that Rockingham received, simply because it had the same management, and so most of the time have the same problems. Many of these are repeat comments. So I will say that throughout the year when we did our testing, because we pull samples from all points during the year, so the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, then we look at things at the end. Cynthia and Alyssa did a really great job getting things cleaned up. They made our jobs a lot easier this year by sort of having things in a good place. But when we did our test work, we definitely found issues throughout the year with internal controls and procedures. And in the final version of this, there is the opportunity for management to respond, which I believe that they did for Rockingham, and I expect would do the same for Bellows Falls, to say, yes, we agree or don't agree with this, and here's what we're going to do about it. So one of the issues that we discovered was that the budget wasn't posted accurately in the financial accounting software. And obviously we recommend that you do that so that you can have a good sense of your budget to actual. We found some issues with tax being charged by vendors. So important to make sure that all your purchases are tax exempt, because you are not to be charged tax as a municipal entity. And there were some issues with documentation. So some of the invoices didn't have a department head signature as per your procedure. And then in terms of payroll and payroll liabilities, we continued to find that there were some problems with reconciliation. Some of the deductions were set up inaccurately. That required revision to some of your reporting, particularly related to your income tax withholding. So that has been corrected, but it was certainly a problem throughout the year. And I think that's it for the management letter. That was like an earful, I'm sure, because it was a mouthful for me to go over all this. So I'm happy to take additional questions or clarification or explain things in more detail if anyone would like.
Thank you, Brittany. Scott, I wanted you to have an opportunity to speak to this before we enter with questions.
No, I do appreciate some of the items that Brittany had highlighted were some of the challenges when we were transitioning in the finance office, and some of the issues that were highlighted in the audit were really failures of more of the upper level management than it was of the working folks in the office. The compliance related issues were brought through the chain, but they weren't acted on appropriately in some cases, and that's why there were some instances where tax was charged and other sloppy practices were basically not condoned, but certainly not stopped at the appropriate level that they should have been. So I look at that more as a failure of our senior management, and it led to some of the changes that we've made. And I think, as Brittany has highlighted, we've worked very hard with Nemrick and Cynthia and Alyssa to create some additional safeguards within our normal daily practices, and going back through some of the items that were related to the software and making sure that what we're doing makes all of our current policies followed and more appropriately maintained. So I feel pretty confident that the next time through, we won't have some of these repeat comments. But unfortunately, due to the timing and just some of the issues that were there are going to be some things that we'll have to address in our rebuttal letter, which we plan on in more detail as we go forward. So I just want to present that overall picture to the board, recognizing that, these are challenges. They were addressed through some changes in staff, some other changes that we've made to our internal controls, and I think that we feel that we're in a much better position now that we can eliminate these and we won't see some of these repeating. The income tax issues were a little bit more of a challenge and were a little bit more of a problem. Took substantially more time to work through and required a lot of refiling, a lot of additional work on behalf of staff to go back and do verifications and updates. And again, we had to create some additional policies internally to make sure that these kinds of problems don't happen again. So I think with that as a little bit of a background, I feel pretty confident that we've addressed these and feel pretty good going forward that we won't have repeats on some of those more significant concerns.
Okay, questions from the trustees?
I've got a couple, Deb.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
It looked to me, Scott, that in the management letter, under the cash disbursement area, that might not have been the finance director as much as the staff. It would seem as though in doing accounts payable, there ought to be some verification of signatures, et cetera. And so I think it's important when as you and Alyssa are doing the response that you include the staff in the kind of in putting that response letter together, because as I said, it would appear in that area. I agree, all the other areas I would say finance director, but that one looked to be perhaps some staff issues as well. But the other question I had for Brittany is have you mentioned the contribution that Cynthia made, obviously, but we now have a new finance director, and I was curious as to if you've had an opportunity to work with Alyssa at all, and what your thoughts are in terms of are we heading in a better direction here?
So I have worked with Alyssa pretty extensively. She's been very responsive and very interested in understanding and learning. We actually, we've had several conferences where, she just had questions about the audit, or she was looking at I say her, but she was looking at the books and couldn't quite figure out how they jived to the audit. And she was pretty conscientious about that. So my experiences with her up to this point have all been positive. We have not audited the work that she has done, but I do think that she, she's very concerned about it being right. So
Good. Okay. That's all I had, Deb.
Thank you, Jigs. Anyone else? Any other trustees have any other questions? I can't see
I have
Wade.
one.
Okay, go ahead, Wade.
I have one of Brittany. Can you you mentioned on the final page here, 94, the unmodified?
Yep.
Can you just, what were you, can you say that again? What
Yeah,
that was?
so unmodified opinion is actually the best you can get. It means that we didn't feel that we needed to alter our opinion on the financial statements or qualify it in any way.
So that column there would either be unmodified or modified?
Yes, or it could also be an adverse opinion or a disclaimer of opinion, which means that we didn't even feel we could give an opinion. There's 4 types.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Brittany, I guess the only clarifying point that I wanted to make to the board is none of the COVID relief funds that are in the Arpa funds that we're going to be talking about this evening are in this audit. So they're not in any of your categories of fund balances. So
Right, you
had
not received those as of fiscal year end, correct, yep.
So that is not part of that makeup of that 600+ thousand that is currently in the general fund balance, so.
Yeah, correct. I was just making a general statement about why some folks have seen some increases, but that's not the case for Bellows Falls.
That's great.
Okay, the only thing I would say is in defense of the staff in receivable and payables is if any one of you had ever worked in these departments, which I had for many years prior to what I do now, you would understand that you can't refuse a finance director who forces an issue. So I just want to put it there. Having lack of signatures or other concerns of tax bill issues are things that occur through your boss. And as a person who processes a check, processes the warrants, you can't refuse that. So you wind up being considered responsible. The fact is, it's just paperwork that passes your desk that you're required to process. I just want to say that as the comment has been made about the staff as far as cash disbursements. That's it.
Yeah, and I would just add that I will tell you that it is unusual for us to have an entity have 0 management letter comments. It happens, but we usually find things. I know that the goal is none. And this isn't, when we write these things, this isn't an effort to say, you're doing a bad job or pointing fingers. We're just trying to give some opportunities for improvement and give areas to focus. And sort of inevitably, when you focus on one area, another one gets a little bit weaker sometimes because you're putting a lot of focus. So, we're just trying to let you know where to work on for the next year. So
Thank you, Brittany. Appreciate all the work.
yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
A little bit better than the Bellows Falls Union High School.
Significantly. Are you kidding?
And
I'm
the,
just going to sign off on that note, but
Yeah. Deborah
Zoom away.
and I have had the opportunity to talk to Brittany in that regard. So,
Yes, we have.
yeah.
All right, gentlemen, if we move on to the next item on our agenda, it's the resolution to adopt the ARPA standard allowance. And you have information concerning that allowance in your packet.
Right, so again, I just wanted to clarify for the board, and I know that we talked about it as previously in the audit discussion about fund balances. So our current ARPA balances of the $886,356 is a segmented amount of revenue will be put into a segmented category once we decide, or the board decides how they want to spend that money going forward. What this resolution does is give you the opportunity to do a one-time general statement to say, we're going to spend money on provision of government services, and then it allows you to do a much less of a reporting going forward on the ARPA compliance side. So it doesn't restrict any of your activities. It doesn't restrict your ability to do projects that you want. It just basically helps to eliminate a lot of unnecessary continual reporting. So it was one of the standard recommendations through the VLCT. And the reason that it's on this agenda is the first ARPA reports are due by the end of the month. And so if you have the standard allowance, it allows you to do one level of reporting. If you don't have the standard allowance, it's a much more involved and much more difficult reporting from that point, and then all the quarters going forward until we're, through the spending of the money.
Right. So we would need a motion for this. We can put the motion on the floor if you wish, and then questions after that before it passes.
There is a recommended motion on the
Yep.
attached memo.
There is.
Okay, Madam President, I'll go ahead and make the motion that I move that the Village of Bellows Falls make the one-time irrevocable decision to elect the standard allowance approach for our ARPA award in the amount of $886,356 to spend on the provision of government services throughout the period of performance of the grant.
I'll need a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Wade. Is there discussion on this matter? Anyone?
So
All right.
we have to do this on or before the 30th.
Yes,
And we don't have to do it one time?
that's it.
Oh,
Once
good.
it's done, then the reporting continues on, and it's a much more.
Good.
Anything further?
No, this sounds like a break.
Yeah, surprising.
Streamline.
Yeah.
All right, then.
Yeah.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. And we have to do it, we have to do round table, I'm sorry. So
Yeah,
first of all, Jigs,
Aye.
Jeff,
Jim McAuliffe, aye.
okay, thank you.
Aye. Wade Mashar, aye.
Stefan,
Stephen Golick, aye.
Deborah Wright, aye. Okay, it is unanimous. All right. So there's that. And we have completed that. That probably produced maybe a little less paperwork, Scott, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
slightly, but still helpful. Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda, resolution to adopt local hazard mitigation plan. And we have a copy of the resolution in our packets.
Right, I had handed out the full packet to you previously because it's a fairly extensive document. It's been vetted by the state, it's been vetted by our neighbors, it's gone through the town. It has to go through the village and also has to go through Saxon's River, then it goes back to the state ultimately. And really what it does is gives us the ability to then go after additional federal funds. So after the cleanup funds and the funds from the events from July, we want to do some additional work on stormwater up and around, for example, the Hyde Hill drainage area. So in order to do that, we have to have this plan adopted so it makes us eligible for other pots of money, like the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. They have a new program called Building Resiliency in Communities. They call it BRIC. All of that runs in conjunction with the state and District 1 and FEMA. And really, my hope is that we have these old studies, and by old, this is a 1992 study that I have here from C.T. Molly and Associates, which looked at that whole drainage area and made some recommendations back in 1992 that might help mitigate some of the stormwater. Well, certainly it's a little bit out of date and needs a little bit of updating, but there is still some good, useful data in here, and it actually gives us a good baseline to develop a real plan that we could then bring forward through these programs and try to get federal money to really to sort of take some of that, that large flow that happens in these heavy storm events and segment some of that flow. So it's not all coming down that same section on Hyde Hill into that grate and then causing the backups and the flooding that we see through the village. So this is really just another step in that process. And I know that stormwater and flooding and those kinds of things take lots of patience to get these types of projects off the ground. And it takes a lot of planning and going through various agencies, but I feel comfortable that if we can get through that process, I think there are some solutions out there with some federal help. We can really help to offset some of these problems and maybe not see that downstream flooding that we've seen, more recently, and hopefully, as everybody talks about climate change and how it impacts our weather here, that's been the biggest issue that we've seen, is these heavy deluges and downpours that create these, sort of flash flood conditions. So that's the broader picture, tying back to the idea of what this plan is actually supposed to be part of.
Okay, so we have the resolution and we'll need a motion to sign the resolution, Scott?
What I just need you to do is just make a basic motion to adopt. So it's called the Multi-Jurisdiction Hazard Mitigation Plan,
Okay,
and then authorize you to sign it because you are on the signature page.
right, I see that. I'm not sure currently how I'm supposed to sign that, but,
I'll leave it in your box or I'll bring it by your house and. at some
and I'll
point-
call you when it's done. Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so would someone like to make that motion to sign for me to sign the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan?
I'll make the motion for the village president to sign that we adopt and sign the multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan for the village of Bellows Falls.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Start with Jigs.
Aye. Jim McAuliffe, aye.
Jeff,
Jeff Dunbar, aye.
Wade,
Wait, Michelle, aye.
and Stefan,
Stephen Golick, aye.
and Deborah Wright, aye. It's unanimous. All right. And yes, Scott, I'll take care of that. Just let me know when you drop it off and I'll get it signed.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, moving right along, is consideration of an appointment to the Fire Equipment Review Committee. And we have the old agreement in our packet from 1995.
So Wade has brought this up at previous joint board meetings, and we've been working on updating this document, really more specifically along the lines of what is included in necessary equipment, trying to get better indications as to what the obligations are of each of the communities. But as in reviewing that, one of the things that we've been derelict in doing is appointing the elected officials that are part of this fire equipment committee. So the town recently had the same document in front of them, and they've appointed a representative. If the village chooses to do the same thing this evening, then we'll also send it to Saxon's River. And at that point, then we'll have a fully vetted or functioning fire equipment committee. And we'll begin to also, I think, update some of our practices and procedures so that we have publicly, public agendas, minutes, some of the things that are standardized for any of our other municipal practices.
Mhm.
Madam President, I've served, I believe, in that capacity a number of times. I'd be interested in continuing to serve in that capacity on this board to represent the trustees.
Right. Is there anyone else who's interested? Just checking.
I would do it if as well. I mean, either way, I could do it.
I want to thank you for your years of service, Stefan. I'm not sure how we sort this out. If the two of you are available to do this, and what is the will of the rest of the trustees?
My feeling is that, Wade has really provided some leadership over this past year since he's been on the board. in terms of getting this fire committee addressing some issues that there's no reflection on you, Stefan, and your contributions in the past, but I think it would be, in my opinion, it would be ideal to let Wade continue his work and the leadership he's provided. So that's kind of just because of recent events. That's the way I'm leaning. So
Jeff, we haven't heard from you.
I second what Jiggs has said. I think that, Wade has brought this to the table and spoken on it a number of occasions, and it makes sense. He'd serve in that capacity if he's willing.
Stefan or Wade, would you like to speak to that?
How long's the term?
It really doesn't have a.
It just,
People like-
just curious.
like Supreme
How
Court.
long you got? 20 years?
Well, I don't know, no, it hasn't been around that long.
Quite a while it's been
Yeah, it's
around.
been a bit, but I think over the course of 5 years, we probably met maybe 5 times.
Yeah.
Met more times in the last year than we did, or the last 2 years than we did over the whole course of a decade, to be honest with you.
And I think as more of our issues arise over equipment and staffing and potential locations of buildings and other types of EMS, all of these things I think are going to become more and more prevalent in our conversations. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to have representation from our elected officials at the table, and then bringing that back to the full board so they get a real sense of the issues and where they're percolating. And
Yeah.
it's really difficult when something just appears on an agenda and it's a $500,000 or $1 million expenditure and the rest of the board somewhat in the dark. And, I think it's a good process for us to start to work through.
So again, we have 2 gentlemen who are interested in the seat. I'm wondering if one of you would like to defer to the other in the appointment.
Sure, I'll go ahead and defer to the other, because like I say, he has come up with a lot of momentum in the last year. So let's see how that plays out, and let's go for it, let's go for into the future, because we've got to step up to the plate and pay more attention to these, to this committee. Currently, it's advisory to the boards.
Yeah.
You have 2 people who've been in the business, have the knowledge, and that's fine. I certainly have plenty of things to do other than that, so I don't have an issue with it.
Okay, so would someone like to make a motion for the appointment, and we'll just make it official?
I'll move to appoint Wade Mazur to the fire committee.
Okay, need a second?
All second.
Thank you. All right, is there any further discussion on the appointment? All right, then, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. I'll start with Jiggs.
Jim McAuliffe, aye.
Jeff?
Jeff Dunbar, aye.
Wade?
Wade Mashur, aye.
Stefan?
Stephen Golick, aye.
And Deborah Wright, aye. It's unanimous. Thank you, Wade. Thank you, Stefan, for your years of service. And we'll give Wade will probably get run ragged now because there'll be more frequent meetings. Yeah. All right, last item on our agenda is to review chapter 11 of the fire alarm safety ordinance, which is in your packet.
So Deb and the ordinance review committee had been busy over the last, 18 to 24 months, going through each of the
No,
various
3
chapters.
years, 3 years, Scott.
I'm sorry, I took a year away from you.
That's okay, that's okay. It's
I lost a COVID year in there somewhere.
long, yes, COVID year, yep.
So it's been multiple years, and I've been trying to bring these chapters to the board in sort of a piecemeal fashion, because it's a little overwhelming if you get them all at once. And the reason I brought this one forward is I think next month we're going to restart our conversation about the housing inspection ordinance. We're sort of waiting for the last effort of the state to see if they're going to step to the plate. It doesn't appear that the statewide portion is going to go anywhere. So at that point, I think we'll have to make some decisions about how we want to approach it locally. It also impacts, I think, part of this ordinance impacts that type of activity and getting in and inspecting and making sure that things are up to code and up to speed. So it made sense to start with this one first, and then you'll see that probably coming to your agenda for the next month. And then as we progress through others, we'll try to get at least one a month on your agendas, so you have an opportunity to go through the work that's already started with the ordinance review committee, and then ultimately, back to you folks for adoption. So that's why this one is a little out of order.
And this one, of course, has had some review, has had review by the ordinance committee. However, majority of input was from Sean McGinnis, who has the expertise in this area, which we did not. And I'm not certain Scott could say if it's been through the attorney's review or not. And
I have not sent all of the different sections to our attorney yet for review, so I will do that.
And I don't know if all the trustees have had an opportunity to review this and have any questions on it at this point, or if we would like to bring it back to our next meeting.
Sure. Yeah.
The question I had is, in terms of fire alarms, is this directed at households or businesses that have fire alarms? And their responsibility with regards to maintaining those alarms, or it's just hard for me to figure out exactly what this is addressing.
This is commercial, I believe, is it not?
Well, it's both. There's sections in here about residential, mostly dealing with smoke detectors, jigs, and very basic things, and they're all based on either the building codes for that are adopted by the state of Vermont, or the NFPA, which is the national fire.
National Fire Protection.
Right.
But really, that's all. We're just aligning our specific ordinance with their language.
Okay, because that obviously is a good idea. I mean, I know in the rental housing ordinance, it was pretty specific about some inspections on these things, and I worry about single family homes that aren't up to snuff on this, but again, how you ever do that. I know a lot of places that I've lived, in order to sell your house, you've got to get a certificate from the fire chief. I think we do have to do that here in Bellows Falls.
Fire marshal, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
when my house was redone, I had to have it inspected by the fire marshal, yes.
Yeah.
So of course, getting to this gets us in line with moving on at some point on the rental housing ordinance, which has this in it, some of this in it, and that's part of the inspection process. So getting this one done, but we do have to approve it. And what I'm saying is, I don't know that we are, as a board, are ready to approve it tonight, or are we? That's the question I'm asking my trustees.
I'd like to,
Okay, good.
personally, I'd like to read the thing entirely.
Yeah, so can we
And
move it to
maybe
the next meeting, Scott? That would make
Sure,
sense.
we can definitely do that. We'll keep it on for the next meeting, and in the interim, I'll send a copy to the attorney if he has any additional comments or questions. Then that'll be back hopefully by the time we meet again.
Anything else, Wade? Wade, do you have anything else? to say?
No. That was it.
I'm asking Wade if he had more, because I kind of interrupted you when I wanted Scott to put it on the agenda for next month.
No, I was just curious no, I don't have anything else on it.
Okay, but I do want us to understand it clearly, and if you have any questions, and especially yourself and Stefan, who have that understanding, and Jeff, who has building understanding, might have some additional questions on how it's worded. That's all.
And then there's somebody like me that obviously doesn't have any understanding of it.
Well,
So,
you do as a homeowner,
well, as a
I do.
homeowner, yeah,
and I do too as a homeowner, but with industry knowledge, that makes sense.
right.
I wasn't
the
trying to
bad
say.
leg,
I know
the
it.
bad
It's
leg, you better
affected
make sure
my
your
whole,
smoke detectors are working.
yeah.
Go light a match. Yeah. Okay, so we want to make sure we fully read this and have any last questions for May 10th. Or you can ask them in advance, send them to Scott if you have them, so they can get clarification. Again, it's not an area of expertise of the ordinance committee, so.
Right.
All right, that clears all the agenda items. That moves us on to reviewing for next meeting on May 10. We've got that one, plus I'm not sure what else Scott might have.
Well, I'll
already.
bring the copy, or at least I'll have the copy of our rental inspection ordinance back on for review and discussion. We don't necessarily have it for action, but I think it's worth it getting back in front of the board just to
Yep.
keep that process moving.
Okay. That sounds good. Excuse me. All right, anything further, you guys can send it to us so we can get it on the agenda for May 10.
We'll have financials, I imagine.
Yes, we will.
Yes, that would make sense. That's the first meeting of the month. And also the question about the summer months, would we put that in May so we can decide what we want to do for June, July, and August? I don't know. If it's something we want to think
Talk
about.
about the meeting schedule. Yeah,
Yeah,
proposed summer schedule.
the summer months, yeah. That was it.
Yep.
Okay.
And then prep for the annual meeting. Do we?
Prep for annual meeting, yep. Yes, which will be, when is that? 18th.
That's the 16th.
16th and 17th?
Well, the
Actually, I'm
vote's the
sorry.
17th.
When
The
is
meeting,
the,
informational meeting is the 10th and the vote is
That's
the
right.
17th.
oh,
So
that's the 10th, that's the same day you've got for
Yeah.
our regular meeting.
right.
Okay,
I figured if we don't have that large of an agenda, we can get through it and still have the informational meeting and have a regular agenda after.
right, and then, okay. And then the following Tuesday will be, the following Tuesday, a week from there will
Right,
be.
the following Tuesday would be the actual
Elections.
polls, right?
Okay.
Yep.
So there won't be an annual meeting on the 16th.
No, it's gonna be the
Yeah.
informational meeting on the 10th.
Oh, okay.
We signed on the warning, and then 8 days from Monday will be the polling place. Polling
Okay.
The one thing you will have though on the 10th is you will have the article to discuss about Australian ballot.
Yep.
From the,
We have to vote that from the floor, right?
Okay. All right.
yep,
And that'll be done on the 10th.
Yes.
yep.
Yes, so, go ahead, Wade.
So what is the time for all this on the 10th? Still start at 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And so as reminders to the public to make sure they'll have to be here, will have to be in the town hall on the 10th in order to vote on the Australian ballot article.
Yes.
Yeah. And is it the 31st in May when the next tri-board meeting is going to be?
That is the current schedule. We're going to talk about ARPA. We'll have our update on the tax sale and probably the update on the fire equipment committee
Okay,
language on the MOU or whatever that is. It's not, yeah, MOU.
okay, great. Do we have any orders, bills, or warrants there to sign today?
No, I'll wait till you're back in the office and then we'll bring it to the next meeting.
Yep, that's fine. Any other business? Let's see, Scott,
Oh, all set?
Stefan,
No, all set.
Wade,
No, I'm good.
Jeff,
Thank you.
Jigs.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
And for myself, I hope I'm good by the next, I know I'll be good by the next meeting. It's been a week, a little over a week, so. keeping everybody safe by not being there. And it's doable, but it's still weird running a meeting from a Zoom, so. No need for an executive session. We do need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
In a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. We have to do the count again. So Jigs,
Jim McAuliffe, aye.
Jeff.
Jeff Dunbar, aye.
Wade
Steph.
Shore, aye.
Okay.
Kevin Gold, aye.
Deborah Wright, aye. Thank you, everyone. Be